Vibrant 5-year leadership of this important ministry, and Kelly for your 10-year leadership. And the most successful way I know of how to speak is to follow our mission leaders who provide this kind of meal. I mean, that's a winning partnership to be able to have. And Trinity does this with other congregations for you because we believe in you. We believe that God is at work in your life to enrich our world, to grow the kingdom. Whether you're currently a dental student, a medical student, you're a faculty or staff here, your life is important, and what you do shapes the lives of other people. And therefore, it's an honor for us as Trinity to be a partner within your life. And because of that, I'd like to talk about something which is basic to all of us, and that are turning points, key turning points in our life. We typically think of a turning point as we're born, we die, and then big decisions like are we going to marry and the job that we'll do. And those all are in play, but I want to frame the key turning points around 4 basic questions. And the questions come: what is your life vision? What is your life work? Who are your relationships? And what will be your legacy? If you traveled to Washington, D.C. this afternoon, you went to the nation's capital, you crossed the street to the United States Supreme Court, and you turned right, you'd come to the Library of Congress. You enter to the Library of Congress into the foyer, and you look on the floor and you see 3 primary symbols. It's the symbol of medicine, law, and faith. The sense of our country and our world looking to you for primary leadership is absolutely keen. Even at a time in which healthcare laws are being rewritten, how people look at professionals is differently now than it has been in past generations. None of that should change your perspective about your life and your future, because it is embedded into our very need to need what you're going to provide and what you are providing. That's care to our body, that's connected to our mind and our heart and our soul. And so from the foyer at the Library of Congress is a statement that through the generations, your work, your life is important to our society. And therefore, as you make a turning point, it involves you, but it's not just about you. It involves other people. And as we then look at these turning points, kind of see how this unfolds for us. We move to the understanding to be able to see through your vision. Now that sounds kind of obvious. We're going to see through your vision. I put on my contact lens today. Maybe you did too. I was in the 2nd grade and I was prescribed glasses so I could see what was then called the blackboard. And amazing how the world has kind of opened up for me. So seeing through your vision sounds redundant, and yet that's exactly what we do. We're being able to try to see how you see life. How do you see life? Because how you see life is wherever you go. 2 psychiatrists were on the elevator, going up, the guy comes on, says, hello. The guy gets off on the 2nd floor, the psychiatrists are going off to the 4th floor, one turns to the other and says, what do you think he meant by that? Or it's said that a pessimist is one who, when hearing the knock at the door, criticizes the sound. It's how we see our life. And so God has a way for us to be able to see life in such a way that we may see more clearly through His eyes. This was recently sent to me from a friend from the Hill Country, knowing that that's my roots. I love sunrises, and sent this to me about kind of being able to see the big picture each day. And God provides this for us. Seeing the big picture each day, whether that's a sunset for you if you're more connected to the latter part of the day, or a sunrise to the early part of the day, and probably you're connected to both. It's a pause moment of what's called natural revelation. And in the natural revelation of how God is wanting you to be able to see the big picture of what He's providing. That's what C.S. Lewis is describing when he said that he believes in the S-U-N, in the sun, not just because he can see the sun in the sky, but because of the sun, he is able to see everything else. Amazing, 93 million miles away, God has designed the Earth's rotation around the sun in a way that we're able to have our civilization, and that we're able to have enough light to be able to see during what we call our daytime. And Jesus said, live your life in the daytime when the sun is there, and then live your life in the darkness when the darkness is there. But always be faithful as you're following and trusting me. So how are you seeing through your vision? What has shaped your vision? C.S. Lewis's good buddy was J.R.R. Tolkien. You probably know that. These two guys, Tolkien was a high introvert. Lewis was a little more gregarious. They met on Friday mornings in a group in a place just across the street from the Oxford campus. And they would talk about their writings and their vision and what would unfold. And you know, Tolkien created these incredible figures like Gandalf, who said to somebody that would frequently be overlooked, Bilbo Baggins, seemed to be just really an affable, happy guy. But what was his life important? Most people overlook his sense of importance. But Gandalf said, you need to know this about yourself. There is more to you than you know. And in your life, I trust that someone has already said that to you that helped you begin to believe in the power of your life. But part of being a receiver is also then to be a giver. You're here in the medical dental school, whether it's a student, faculty, staff, because you've determined to be a giver. Now, you receive compensation for that, but you've chosen to enter the stress of healing because you wanted to give. And again, in all the push and pull of healthcare laws and how we structure ourselves, it's this vision that you know will keep you centered in our uncentered world. And to always remember there is more to you than maybe what you're feeling or knowing at that time. But even more than that, I want to say to you that people are going to be coming to you and looking to you and listening to you, wanting to know the same thing. Is there something more to them than what they know at that time in their life? And therefore, there's a relationship that you form, as you know, as a dentist, as a physician, as a faculty member, and as a staff member, that your vision is a way of casting the vision to help them see the big picture of what God is doing. Frequently, when people come to you, they are anxious. They're anxious about symptoms, and what do the symptoms mean? Will they lead to a diagnosis? With a diagnosis, what will be the prognosis? And then as followers of Christ, whether you're a seeker now and moving into belief, or you've been a long-term believer, there's a sense that we may place the ultimate prognosis into the hands of God's vision and that hope, and that you help to calm people's anxiety. Now, it can be a particular day that you begin in your rounds. It's been an anxious time in your life. But you know that as a professional, part of your calling around your vision is to keep your anxiety lower than everyone else around you. Much like the parent of a teenager. And by keeping your anxiety lower than those who are around you, then the gap of that difference is a contribution that you can make, not simply by the information that you give or the instructions that you provide, but by the inspiration for people to see the meaning of their life. In the Middle Ages, there was a sojourner who walked into a village, and he saw that there were stonemasons working hard along the road. And so he went up to one of the stonemasons and asked him, "What are you doing?" And that stonemason said, "What do you mean, what am I doing? I'm picking up this stone, taking it over there to that wall, coming back and getting another stone, putting it up to that wall." Sojourner said, "Okay." So he went to a second stonemason and he asked the same question. "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, mister, I'm taking the stone over here to that wall and we're building the wall. Can't you see the wall we're building? Isn't that pretty obvious?" So he went to a third stonemason and asked the same question, but the response was very different. That stonemason was filled with a kind of joy and said, "I have the privilege of being able to build a wall that was helping to build a cathedral to the glory of God." He was able to see the big vision of what was occurring. Martin Luther King Jr. would say, if you're a street sweeper, make sure that you are sweeping the streets to the glory of God. I had a friend, James Sullivan, who helped to mentor me in some ways, lived in Nashville, and he met a street sweeper early in the morning. And he said, "Mister, why are you working so hard when so many other people aren't even paying attention and there aren't many people coming by?" He said, "Well, because I have a job, and my job is to make this city clean." We are really connected with each other around the vision of seeing what we do. So as you provide information and instruction, what really makes people sing and what gives people to dance, whatever the diagnosis, is the inspiration of being able to see the vision of what their life means. And God's entrusted you the power to help to deliver that meaning. All right. So if we have a vision that's being shaped, and we can determine the nature of the vision by how we can see God at work within our life, and then to be able to see God at work in the lives of our world, then we are understanding that God has given us a calling. And what this calling is, vocation, vocare, literally means that it's a calling. I'm grateful that in John's life and Scott's life, my life, Kelly's life, we have formal words of calling to a ministry. But the radical movement of Christianity is to say that everyone has a calling. Everyone has a calling. And the calling is that which releases the talents and expresses our passion. In America, we have a lot of freedom to be able to choose our work where we receive our vocation. Some people get a paycheck, and they do that in order to be able to do their real calling in another area of their life. But my hunch is that you have chosen the dental and the medical field because you believe that God has endowed you with the intellectual ability and the talents that can be released and express the passion of your heart. And that your work can make the kind of vision difference because what you do, you know, is important into the lives of others. That is essential in order to understand the meaning. So here are two little ones trying to figure out the meaning of life. Okay? And you can read this. The sad thing about this show is that in 70 years, we'll be doing the same thing and still be bald, no teeth, and wearing diapers. You notice the word there is kind of doing. It's catching the vision, seeing what's kind of out there still to be lived. And is it going to be any different from what we're doing right now? We can go through this world and simply exist. I was in Santiago, Chile for a meeting, got a telephone call, and then that time, span of 30 minutes in downtown Santiago, I got word that a beloved friend of ours, John Park, had just died, 30 years minister at Trinity. And I also got a word that a friend of mine from Baylor days had died of a heart attack. So that's part of our normal life, isn't it? Our world, but it still touches our heart and it tugs on us. With my friend Duncan, who was from Baylor, when we were in college together, and I trust that you have a friend right now in your life you're having this kind of conversation with. We said, as we live our lives, we're going to be tempted to compromise, to get the paycheck, to pay the bills, to have 2 cars in the garage, one of which works, and have a white picket fence and 2.3 kids. So-called the American dream. And all the life is about trying to pay the bills to get that to happen. But let's make a commitment to each other that our lives will be more than that. That somewhere along the way we'll be aware of the key turning point about our calling. That it may include that, but that it is more than that. And I shared that story at the funeral service. Duncan had asked me, really commanded me to 2 things. One, to officiate his wedding, which I did along the San Antonio River 25 years ago, and to lead in his funeral service. And out of that kind of covenant with his friend was part of helping to keep me focused around a vision of calling. And I trust that you have a friend like that. With Scott and with Kelly, you've got some great partners here to be able to kind of talk that out with. But people who come to you for treatment, knowing that their lives are mattering to you because of the work that you're doing. And as you do the work in their life, they feel important because of the training that you've gone through and the time that you're investing with them. That when they leave your office, they've been touched by the hands of a trained, educated professional releasing talent and expressing passion. That's a relationship that makes a difference. In my life, I'm fortunate to be able to have professionals, a dentist or physicians, who have made that kind of investment in my life by a relationship. And through what happens in the exchange comes are very vulnerable moments. And in that vulnerability, God can do some of His best work in the lives of people just by how you do your work with them. Where are you going to be in 70 years? Well, we have the turning point about being able to shape our vision by which we see everything else. We have the turning point about our calling by which we do our talents. And then we have the people. Now, it can be in your practice that you will say or find yourself saying, you know, the best thing about my practice are my patients. And the worst thing about my practice are my patients. And the great news is that they can feel like one and the same. And by understanding that God has given us the sphere of relationships with people, He can work out His problems in the midst of tension relationships and the easy relationships. And He's at equally work with all of that. Think of Jesus. Okay. Here's the greatest leader that's ever lived. He chose among His most inner circle the 12 apostles. And they were from very different circles of life. There were different political parties. They came from different branches of the faith. They came from different economies. They spoke with different dialects. Jesus chose a very heterogeneous group of the inner circle followers that were His sphere of relationships, because He believed that He could form a community among that gifted group of apostles. It would help to be a model of a community for the whole movement of God. And that in the sense of our sphere, what it is that God brings together in working in the midst of the diversity, His great hope in the harmony of relationships. The life of the Trinity people do this beautifully in a way in which I learn from them regularly, in a sphere of relationships. That we're all in this, we're in this together, whether it's across the street and living life and sharing the promise of God's love, or around the world, like in your return from a mission trip. That's part of what this mission is of one of the books I was privileged to co-edit and write for. It's a work called Reconciliation Networks of Our World. And in here are a couple of stories about the medical community going to regions like Rwanda after the genocide, and entering in that by the gift of that calling, that work, to go into a sphere of relationships to help create a transformation. And the 6 mission trips that are provided every year through CMDA is that opportunity in which you are deciding when is it that you may simply go and give to another people group because you identify they are part of you. You are part of them. In the midst of this kind of modeling, the theme for our work is called Healing Hurts and Building Hope in Our Fractured World. And the relationships are the power of what God's great promise can accomplish. In the midst of Catholic Christianity, when the Second Vatican Council began, Pope John the 23rd said, the magnanimous need across our globe then, and we would say today in 2012, is to become people who know how to give care in relationships by which God can transform the world. You are involved in a highly personal calling. In the midst of people trusting you in relationships, people will hear your voice long after that last appointment, long after that surgery. after many sunsets and sunrises, they will still be playing your voice inside their head. Because they had entered your sphere and you offered them a healing and inspiration. And people can then experience that trust. Of course, the opposite can also be true. Got another patient. But before you walk into each room, it may be that what you're doing, that you will do, is you kind of catch your breath and say, Lord, you've trusted me with another person. And when you walk into that room, that person is uniquely special to you, getting your very best attention. And you know, you treat a family. And you sit down with a family and you provide that. In the sense of this provision. This is last night at Trinity Baptist Church. Ricky is the guy to the right. Kevin is the person to the left. Ricky is on the ministry staff at Trinity, and his responsibility is very important. He is a custodian. He helps to create the space of 300,000 square feet where spiritual experiences can happen. He's an essential partner in our effort. Kevin is an associate principal at a charter high school that one of our campuses, part of that campus is dedicated for that charter high school to be. A couple of weeks ago, Kevin's walking across the gym. Ricky sees him and says, hey, I know you. Kevin, the guy on the left, on your left, looking, says, yeah. Ricky says, I know you. And Kevin begins to think back, said, yeah, I know you too. Oh, yeah. You're that guy when I was 16 years old, told me to study and make good grades. You're that guy who came to me and said there was promise in my life. You're that guy who helped me be able to see a vision of what was possible for me. In the sphere of relationship, what Ricky understood is that his responsibility is really about relationships. And that's true for every one of us. Whatever our job description describes, it ultimately comes down to relationships. So therefore Jesus would say, we love God with all of our heart, mind, soul, and strength. And we do what? Love our neighbor. And Jesus went to the cross because of how he defined neighbor. He went to the cross because he defined the neighbor as everyone. As everyone. And the followers can do nothing less than also say everyone. Ricky and Kevin, a story of how it happens in making a life. You know what Ricky says he has in his at his home? In 100 years from now, people won't wonder about what kind of house I lived in, what kind of car I drove. What God is going to want to know, and people will know, is how did I invest in the lives of others? In your work, you're specifically investing in that great life for others. And this informs your legacy of what your life will accomplish. This is a photograph of a husband and wife, a man and a woman, who, upon their death, this photograph was put up in a law school. In the midst of that was saying one part of a legacy of what their life was about. Now, if this couple's life is only about a photograph on the wall with a plaque, and that's it, that's a sad way to leave this world. But if the photograph or the plaque, or however else that is described, is written large upon the hearts of people, to where then people will talk about you because of what you meant to their life, that's a legacy that puts a smile on God's face and lasts forever. L.J. Gregory was a tough old man in Bernie, Texas. I got to know him when I was a little boy. He's the one who taught me how to tell stories. He was our local dentist who didn't use any anesthetics. You think I look forward to going to his office. But we would sit in his backyard underneath his pecan trees in a very simple yard of a simple house. And he trusted me to tell stories. Small town boy, small town life. But he invested time in a little boy. The first funeral I would ever officiate as a junior in high school, it would be for L.J. Gregory. He didn't know at that time what would transpire, nor did I. but in the sense of a legacy of a really crusty, hard-driven man, was a tenderness of heart, and somebody who was really yearning to know what it meant to love God and be loved by God, to trust a life to Christ. And out of a relationship, what it is that God may do to write a legacy. I am thrilled about the future because of you. I'm thrilled because of what you can see through your vision. I'm thrilled because of what can be released through your talents in work that expresses your passion. I'm thrilled by the people that come into your sphere of relationships. And because they've been with you, their life will be lived at a higher plane. And then one day, instead of just two babies that grown up to be 70-plus-year-old men, saying that ain't changed much, that you'll be able to say, God, thank you for the privilege of living. It went so quickly. Thank you that you trusted my life with the opportunities that you have given. Our prayers for Trinity go with you. May I offer a prayer. These are your men and women, your callings at work within their life. We thank you for each of them, and collectively, that in the midst of this key time in their life work, you're forming among them relationships that can be foundational for the rest of their journey. Bless the relationships. Bless the wonderful work that you do through CMDA and through the vision of this mission ministry of how you affect other people groups as well as each dentist, each physician, each person who makes the trip. Thank you for the people that have not yet met these physicians, these dentists, these faculty members, these staff members, but how you will bring into their lives people either here in San Antonio, other parts of Texas, or other regions of the world. You'll bring this group into those lives, and those people will say, thank you, God, for him and for her. And it's tough. There will be moments of despair, but I pray for your resiliency to renew their energies by reviving their sense of call through purpose, by renewing their commitment to their passion of their talents, by seeing people as not as problems but as promises, and by seeing a legacy which you're wanting to write in their life each day, that you will let your resiliency be the source of their constant renewal. For each sunrise of each sunset of each year of each decade through this great 21st century, through Christ, sovereign Lord of grace. Amen. Amen.